They were pulling out, they were done. That contract went from $70,000 down to, I think, $2,500 a month that coming Monday. So it was a huge hit and kind of a wake-up call to make sure that we didn't have one large account where if we did lose it, it could sink the ship.
You're either the smartest guy in the room or the luckiest, but as we say in poker, I'd rather be lucky than good.
So that's Tom Heaviland. He went from one truck in 1985 to selling his business to a public company for millions of dollars. Getting there, he lost his biggest contract overnight. His dad died suddenly, and all of a sudden, he was splitting his profits 50-50 with his stepmom.
Unfortunately, it took an event like my dad passing away for me to move into that role and really find my footing.
The crisis that almost sank him, the loss that freed him, and then the sprint that tripled his value, leading to his exit.
We finally agree on the multiple. Ed stands up and he reaches across the table, he shakes my hand and he says, "We have a deal."
Welcome back to The Turn. I'm Corey Mitchell of Iconic Founders. The Turn is where blue-collar founders talk about the businesses they've built, the value they've created, and what comes next after they sell. Tom wasn't even looking to get in the landscaping business. One trip to California, a round of golf with his dad, and all of a sudden, they're partners in a landscaping company with one truck.
You know, we started cutting grass and trimming shrubs, pulling weeds and doing all that early on. So my dad, myself, and his wife, my stepmother, went in as equal shareholders, bought the company. We each put up $11,000. The owner carried back a $100,000 note for 10 years. And
wow.
And we chipped away. I think that first year we closed out 1985 with about 150,000 in sales. So
awesome.
We were a tiny company then.
So how long did it take you to pay off the business?
We paid it off in 10 years. My dad and I worked in the business. My stepmother, handled the books. We just had our heads down for, the first, 5 years or so, just doing the work. My dad could cut grass like nobody's business. And I started to do a little bit of sales, trying to grow. And then we slowly picked up a large HOA. Then we picked up a large office industrial park, which opened our second branch and continued to grow and learn the business from there.
Tell us about some of the challenges that you faced.
Good question, Corey. This big industrial park was a few hundred acres, big industrial manufacturing and warehouse buildings up there. And we did all the common area, all the slopes. We did some of the buildings in the park. The developer was out of Canada, a company called Cadillac Fairview. Well, the recession hit mid to late 90s. And Cadillac Fairview called us in on a Friday morning. I'll never forget. It was kind of Black Friday for us.
Yeah.
And said, "Hey, look." And this contract at the time was around $60,000 or $70,000 a month. It was a big contract for us.
Oh, wow. That's a huge contract.
Yeah, it was enormous. And that contract went from, $60,000, $70,000 down to, I think, $2,500 a month that coming Monday.
Holy moly.
So they were pulling out, they were closing down the operation, and, they were done. And so, we had a massive layoff of workforce and, just a skeleton crew just to do the basic maintenance for this park for, the next few years. And I tell you, we were like, how are we going to survive this? And fortunately, we had enough business. We could kind of stabilize and make the necessary cuts to weather the storm. But it was a huge hit and kind of a wake-up call to make sure that, moving forward, we didn't have one large account that dominated our portfolio where if we did lose it, it could sink the ship.
Would you ever have a crisis like that ended up having a silver lining for you?
Without hesitation, I can tell you it was December 20th, 1997. My dad passed away suddenly of a stroke. And awful. Yeah, get that call late at night. And, the next morning you wake up and you're like, wow, what just happened? Dad was no longer there. So my life changed significantly. I mean, we were equal shareholders, the three of us. My dad was the president just because he's dad.
Sure.
But after he passed away, I had to move more into, that back office and more the business, because I was more on the operation side of things at the time. When that happened, it was like, wow, okay, I kind of like this, It feels better. I'm not an operations detail punch list.
Yep.
I'm a horrible account manager or project manager.
I'm the same. I'm more of a sales guy than an ops guy. Yeah.
Exactly. But it was like a breath of fresh air. It's like, wow, this feels really good. And unfortunately, it took my dad passing away for me to move into that role and really find my footing. Fortunately, I have a wife that I've been married to for 37 years who was, a huge rock.
What a wake-up call to get. I'm sure it was awful.
Life insurance retired his dad's shares, and now he was in business with his stepmom, 50-50. For every dollar they made, she got half. He reinvested in the business, she took half out. He endured that for 7 years, but by then, he'd had enough.
I went to her and said, hey, look, either you're going to buy me out or I'm going to buy you out, but we need to value this company and figure out that strategy moving forward. So we got the business valued. I ended up buying her out. And not that we had a bad relationship, Corey. We had she's grandma to the kids, but it was stressful. Once that happened, I could focus on, continuing to grow the business.
Tom was 46 when he bought her out. $5 million in revenue, nice lifestyle business. But he started thinking to himself, what's this thing worth? And that changed everything.
Walk us through how the growth of the business took place and how your son joined you and kind of what his role was.
Yeah. So as we grew and we started to professionalize, I'm hiring a CFO or a controller. I'm hiring a director of operations. I will say this, most of the mistakes and the hardest part for me and why I struggled or the company struggles because of poor hiring decisions, being slow to fire. But I think once I got that equation figured out and straight, and I really got quality people, we tried to, hire people that had horticultural degrees and really knew landscape. Because my dirty little secret is I don't have a love of landscape. I'm not a horticulturalist. I like the business, but my dad and I could have bought a plumbing business or an electrical.
I don't love asbestos that much either. But it helped me build this house.
Right. Yeah. That's good.
So when your dad passed, I'm just curious on some of the milestones of the business in terms of the size. I don't really have a good sense of the size of your company. How large was the business from a revenue standpoint when your dad passed? And then maybe when you bought it out fully from your stepmother all the way through the time when you transacted in 2019. What was that transition?
When my dad passed, we were probably about 3 million. When I bought my stepmom out, we were probably about 5 million. When we transacted, we were 15 million, which, for San Diego, we were one of the bigger companies. We had a great brand and a great reputation. But for me, for a long time, it was lifestyle. It was spinning off, nice cash flow. And, we took a lot of trips and we, did a lot of nice things. And it was a lifestyle business, which is what it is for a lot of, family run companies. And it wasn't until, it was probably 5-6 years before our exit where I really started thinking about, and again, another lesson learned is I wish I would have started thinking about value of the company earlier on in my career, measuring, okay, what's the value today? And once we started doing that and measuring it, then we really saw the impact and really made decisions. Everything centered around how do we build value?
Yeah, you're speaking my language. This is a huge amount of the work I do now is work with founders on figuring out how to maximize value in their business.
Yeah.
Curious, what are some of those key needle moving things you did over those 5 years pre-transaction that moved the needle and made your business more valuable?
I'd say one of the biggest ones was we shut down the construction division. Corey, we weren't built for construction. It was just, the margins were lower. It took our focus away from our core business, which was commercial maintenance, recurring revenue with ancillary or enhancement sales on top of that. So I made the decision to shut that down probably 2 or 3 years out of exit. And we did that. And man, we just saw it wasn't hockey stick, but it was pretty significant. And that helped. And it increased the value of the company, certainly, because, our margins were higher. And once we just narrowed it and focused on it, we got really good at it.
Where did your margin go from before you got rid of the construction division to the point where you transacted from a percentage standpoint?
I would say it jumped probably a minimum of 5 points.
Sweet. Net?
Yeah, that's big.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, it's
that's
big.
sweet.
And, because we're bidding, competitive bid stuff, we're bidding in the, 30% range. Our maintenance is generating minimum of 50. Our enhancements are generating north of 60. Sub work, we're getting 30% on because we subbed our tree and spray chemical applications. So all blended, we were in the mid 50% range on our gross margin, which in our industry is really good.
Revenue, $15 million. Gross margins over 50%. Net income, 20%. This thing wasn't just profitable, it had become valuable. I live in Colorado. It's super dry here. And for years, I put an electrolyte in my water. It just makes me want to drink it more. I tell all the businesses I work with, keep your guys hydrated. We talk about hydration as one of the number one points of safety. I've been using Salt of the Earth. This stuff's great. It's got great flavor. You can just throw them in your bag, and wherever you go, just throw it in the water bottle. It'll keep you hydrated, and they taste great. The grapefruit's my favorite flavor. They also have this 4-pack that's pretty sweet. You can try them all. And now they've introduced the creatine, which is also awesome because it's one of these things everyone's talking about now. You got to get your creatine in every day. So try Salt of the Earth. For all the listeners of The Turn, you can get a 15% discount. Just use code ICONIC or click the link in the show notes.
Tell us a little bit about the experience of selling the business. I'd be curious to know what it felt like.
When I made the decision to sell, I was in 3 NDAs with national companies. I was ready. When I met the CEO of BrightView, which is the largest player in our space, that conversation went well. Their M&A guy came out, Ed Bates, great guy, VP of their merger acquisition team. We had dinner, my son and I, and we hit it off. We were posturing and all that goes with that. And then, got the P&L out, trailing 12, and started arm wrestling over add backs and finally came to an agreement on an EBITDA number. And then, started discussing multiple. And my whole philosophy, Corey, was I am going to shoot really high. And if they say no, I don't care.
Yeah, you're doing great. You're making a ton of money.
And so we finally agree on the multiple and a purchase price. And Ed stands up, and he reaches across the table and shakes my hand. And he says, "We have a deal." I don't know if my son was kicking me we should have gone higher, and it was a good number for us. And, it was a life-changing event. And we were happy with that. We bought a house on Lake Ponderay up in Sandpoint, being able to, walk out your back door onto the deck, onto the dock, into the boat, that's a good lifestyle.
What was it like going from having a cash flowing business to kind of a lump sum amount of money in the bank?
Surround yourself with great advisors. I had a terrific M&A attorney who, really managed the process for me well, because you can't do this alone, right? You need help, and it is a big lift. And again, you got to keep the business running. And I'll never forget, because I had an earnout as well, which I was going to crush. And, unfortunately, COVID came along that March, which kind of put the kibosh on that. It's hey,
so you missed your earnout.
I barely crept across the finish line to the original EBITDA that we had agreed upon. My M&A attorney, Patrick, said, "Listen, be happy with this price here because this is not guaranteed. So be happy. But my wife and I put a lot into a donor advisory fund because we want to give away a lot of money. And I bonused out our key team members. They got some nice checks. I wanted to share them because really they're the ones that got me there. So
yeah, that's right.
So I wanted to share in that success with them as well. So yeah, so I would say, having the good wealth advisors that can manage that flow of funds when it hits the bank is critical. Yeah. And where you place that and how you manage that, because I don't want to touch that. I just want to let it ride, and we live comfortably, so.
Tom sold in 2019. He started with one truck and he sold for life-changing money. 4 months later, COVID hit. He had an earnout on the business. He wasn't going to hit it. He took his attorney's advice, who told him, be happy with the number you get at close, because nothing's guaranteed. But he'd already won, and he knew it.
You sold at the peak. You're either the smartest guy in the room or the luckiest. But as we say in poker, I'd rather be lucky than good.
I'll tell you what, in our business right now, the multiples just continue to climb. I tell people there is no better time right now to sell. And, back when I sold, the guy that had sold to BrightView said, I don't know how long this window is going to stay open, but, you are cranking. Now would be a great time for you to sell. And of course, that window has stayed open, and there's so much activity. There was so much, dry powder on the sidelines, this capital that needs to be invested. And private equity loves our space. They love
they do
the consistency of it, the recurring revenue model, and there's just so much more competition. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's a lot of cash chasing, not a lot of deals.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing the same thing in your space. The multiples are fantastic, and there doesn't seem to be any end in sight just because there's so much dry powder. Last question. One of the things that we're starting as a tradition is just to ask, about any carve outs that you may have had. Anything recently that you found that was cool? AI, a new book you read, an app that you found, an idea, anything that has been kind of cool lately in your life?
Well, for me, Corey, being that I'm 68, it's all about health and wellness now.
Yeah.
And, I want to ski into my 80s, and I want to live a healthy lifestyle, both my wife and I, and do those things. For me, that's, I got a personal trainer I see 3 days a week. So I try to exercise, eat fairly healthy. And so it's about spiritual, well-being, mental well-being, physical well-being, and developing the relationships in my life. My dad died at 65, and, he was in great shape. People thought we were brothers. He looked great. And it was a compliment for dad, but not so much for son. But
yeah, right.
That's important for me now. And the other thing I will say real quick, I spent the first 50 years, building Tom's kingdom, right?
Yep.
All about Tom. Now, it's time to build his kingdom. I'm a Christian, and I feel like, I want to give back. I have the resources. I've got some time. I feel like I've got some talents somewhere that I can use. Yeah, time to build somebody else's kingdom. And not that I need this big legacy, but just, what can I do, in my world?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, you've had an incredible life, incredible career, and there's a lot more to come.
Thank you.
Tom, I'm grateful that you're able to come on the show. I learned a ton from you. Next time you're in Colorado skiing, or next time I'm out in Carlsbad, I'll look you up and buy you a cup of coffee.
Please do, Corey. Thank you. It's been a treat to be on your podcast. Thank you.
Awesome, Tom.
All right.
All the best.
Tom stayed on for 3 years. Then Verde Equity called. They needed a CEO for a landscape roll-up. He's 68. He says he plans to step down next year. But after meeting Tom, I'm not so sure. One thing from Tom's story, measure your value early. Not revenue, value. Tom wishes he'd started at 40, not 57. Because those last few years, when he started building it to sell it, that's when the real money got made. I'm Corey Mitchell. Thanks for watching The Turn, a podcast by Iconic Founders Group. If you made it to the end of this episode, thank you. And if you haven't yet, check out my interviews with Adam Mopsick and Chris Birch. And if you could, forward this to someone you think might enjoy it. For more information about us, go to iconicfounders.com. Let's win.